Let me just start with the deck profile. Once again, this is kind of a CounterBox deck list. So, we have a very thick line of Dusknoir, which should make sense. This allows you to actually get damage into play fairly efficiently. Like, yes, at the cost of prizes, but it's not that terrible, because you can also cheat prizes more efficiently with the attackers that you're using. So we have 4 Duskull. We have 2 Dusclops with the Curse Blast ability, as you can see. You can use this ability once during your turn and put 5 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon, then knock yourself out. And 3 Dusknoir, which has the same ability but does 13 damage. And the attack Shadowbind is actually kind of relevant. We can actually attack with Shadowbind in this deck. So 150 and Retreat Lock. Pretty fucking epic. A 4-2-3 line of Duskull, Dusclops, Dusknoir. Very high. Of course, with thick Dusknoir lines, you would love to have some consistency in your deck as well. Because this is a stage 2 Pokemon, not very easy to put in play. So the consistency that we added, the draw engine, so to say, kind of, is, of course, you might have guessed it, it's Pidgeot. So we run 2 Obsidian Flames Pidgey, 1 Obsidian Flames Pidgeotto, because I ordered a 151 Pidgeotto, it's not here yet. I want a 151 Pidgeotto because it has 0 retreat cost, but for now this one is in. And 2 Pidgeot EX, which has the Quick Search ability. Once during your turn, you may search a card out of your deck and put it in your hands, but you're only limited to 1 Quick Search per turn. Incredibly powerful, of course. Like, this alone is of course not the entire draw engine, but this can get you more easily your combo pieces, because, like I said, this is kind of a combo deck. You're gonna need your combo pieces, and you're most likely gonna need like several pieces per turn, so this helps you a lot just getting the final piece that you're missing. Dusknoir Pidgeot is of course a very good base, but it's also a very slow base. So, what do we do to slow down the pace of the game so that we're allowed to set up all these Pidgeots and Dusknoirs? That's right, we use 2 Budew. We run Budew. For anyone that hasn't seen this card yet, it's a devil. This guy is a devil, straight up. 0 energy for 10 damage, and your opponent cannot play any items during their next turn. And this is a basic Pokemon with 0 retreat cost. This guy is... Let's just say it was probably the most impactful card, the single most impactful cards I've seen in a very long time. This guy is amazing for stalling the game. This guy is the reason why we want to go second, so that we can attack turn 1 with Itchy Pollen. Rather than going first and getting ahead on the evolutions, it's a lot better to just try Itchy Pollen turn 1. And since Hisui and Heavy Ball is rotating, I figured I probably want to add 2 Budews in the deck instead of 1, because if we prize our Budew, that means we don't have access to Budew. And prizing 2 Budew is very unlikely. I did have a practice match today, by the way, against one of my parents, where I prized both of my Pidgeys. So I was like, okay, so I guess that thing can still happen technically, but that was kind of cringe, that match. We're kind of seeing like part of the draw engine, part of how the deck actually functions, and part of the ways we can get there. But what are these crazy attackers? These crazy attackers that I was talking about that are actually going to help us through the game. And how can we power them up? I'll talk about the latter first. So I'm going to go a little bit out of order here. This list's energy count is very low. It runs 4 Reversal Energy. Reversal Energy allows, if this is attached to an evolution Pokemon and you're behind on prizes and the evolution Pokemon does not have a rule box, is give you 3 of every type of energy. Or like every type of energy, but only 3 at a time. So as you can see now, you can actually attack with Dusknoir in this deck if you're behind on prizes, and retreat lock for 150. For just 1 reversal energy. That's pretty cool. This does not work on Pidgeot EX because it has a rule box, but it does work on like literally every other attacker or meaningful attacker. And we also have 1 jet energy. This is going to be relevant later because there's a Pokemon in the deck that has an attack cost of 1. So this is the entire energy count of the deck. 4 reversal energy, 1 jet energy. And crazy as it may sound, that is actually straight up just enough to have enough attacking power for the rest of the game. There's no basic energy in this deck whatsoever. So what are these attackers? I've been alluding to a few already. But I'll show you the most important one, I guess, that I want to be utilizing, which is Ends Darmanitan. Ends Darumaka is an 80 HP basic fire Pokemon with 2 retreat costs, nothing too special. As you can see, this is a Japanese version of the card. Like I said, Journey Together isn't technically out yet in the rest of the world. There's been pre-releases and stuff, but I've ordered some English commons and uncommons from Journey Together, but nothing too crazy. So we run 2 Ends Darumaka and 2 Ends Darmanitan, and I'll just translate these attacks for you. So this is a stage 1, 140 HP Pokemon. The first attack, I forgot what the name was, but it does 30 damage for 2 colorless energy. It does 30 damage for each energy card in your opponent's discard pile. So that's not a very useful attack, except for specifically the matchup against Cerulean GX, because that fella wants to discard like 10 to 15 energy in a game. So you can one-shot Cerulean GX back, so that's pretty nice. But the main draw for this Pokemon is a second attack. I think it's called Darmanitan, which is an incredibly metal name for an attack, by the way. I love the name. For 2 fire and 1 colorless energy, or a reversal energy if you're behind on prizes, it does 90 damage. You discard all energy from this Pokemon, so the 1 reversal energy, and you also do 90 damage to one of their bench Pokemon. Of course, Terra Pokemon are also immune to damage on the bench. Not damage counters, but damage. But Terra Pokemon usually have like pretty high HP counts because they're EX Pokemon, so those are not the Pokemon you want to target with Darmanitan anyway. So we run a 2-2 line of Ends Darmanitan. I think that's the attacker we want to use the most, if possible, in the early game. And ideally on turn 2. Like on turn 2, popping a Dusclops or a Dusknoir, activating our Ends Darmanitan to just straight up swing for 2 prizes. Or 3 maybe, depending on how it works out. We are also running, we're going into the 1 copy Pokemon territory right now. We're running 1 copy of Hops Cramorant. Hops Cramorant is a basic Pokemon, colorless, 110 HP, and it has an attack for 1 energy, does 120 damage, that sounds pretty good, but the text underneath it says if your opponent does not have 3 or 4 prize cards remaining, this attack does nothing. So it only does something if your opponent has 3 or 4 prizes. Now you might be saying like, no, okay, like 1 energy, 120, that sounds pretty alright. You can jet energy this, but there's an even better way to power up this as an attacker. And I'll show you right now. I'll dig a little bit further in the deck. It is right here, Hops Choice Band. This is a tool card, and if you attach this to a Hops Pokemon, so like let's say Hops Cramorant, the attacks of that Pokemon become 1 colorless cheaper, 1 colorless energy cheaper, and they do 30 more damage to the opponent's active Pokemon. So suddenly, this attack from Cramorant, instead of being a 1 energy, 120 damage, is becoming a 0 energy, so free, and then 150 damage. That is pretty relevant. That KOs like practically all stage 1 Pokemon that don't have a rule box. But this KOs like a lot of non-rule box things, which is amazing. And like I said, Jet Energy is in there in case you want to use Hops Cramorant like a second time during the game. Because we do have some recovery in this, so you can use this more than once technically. Yeah, but yeah, Hops Cramorant absolutely goated for mid game or like early game. If you pop like 2, if they take a prize card on you and you pop a Dusknoir, they're already on 4. So that means Cramorant's just immediately activated. The fact that this is tied to prize cards and with Dusknoir making you lose prize cards, you can actually toy with that quite handily. So yeah, a 1-off of Hops Cramorant. And of course a 1-off of Hops Choice Band as well. Let's get into some of the more niche attackers. A reversal box obviously is not complete without at least 1 copy of Swelling Flash Luxray. Luxray, stage 2 Pokemon with 150 HP with the ability Swelling Flash. Once during your turn, if this Pokemon is in your hand and you have more prize cards remaining than your opponent, you may put this Pokemon on your bench, completely bypassing the evolution necessities for this Pokemon. And that's pretty relevant, because with Wild Charge you do 180 damage, and then also 20 damage to yourself, for 1 Lightning and 2 colorless energy. Or a reversal energy if you're behind on prizes. Excellent attacker, huge, low maintenance attacker, big damage, you love to see it. I'm a big Luxray enjoyer. I'll actually just put these stacked here, I think. And then we have a few more Pokemon to show. The final attacker of this deck, we have Bloodmoon Ursaluna EX, of course. Very, very relevant late game attacker. Has the ability Season skill, which makes its Bloodmoon attack 1 colorless energy cheaper for each prize card your opponent has taken. And the Bloodmoon attack is a 5 colorless energy attack for 240 damage, and next turn you go on attack. So in the late game, this can get as low as like 1 or 0 energy. Like I said, incredibly efficient attacker, especially for late game. So as you can see, we're kind of starting to see a trend here. Like early game, you go for Darmanitan, mid game go for Cramorant, late game go for Luxray, late game go for Ursaluna, and then Luxray can kind of like weave in at any point of the game, to be fair. But there's a few more support Pokemon that will help us out. Very standard support Pokemon, just saying. Fezandipiti EX, of course, can't build a deck without one these days. Like almost every deck runs this. Flip the script, you can draw 3 cards if one of your Pokemon was knocked out during your opponent's last turn. Incredibly powerful combat card. Very cheap and easy draw. The attack is kind of unusable in this deck specifically. But you can technically power it up if you attach like 3 reversal energies to it. Because it still gives like 1 colorless energy if you don't meet the conditions of reversal. And then the final Pokemon is Latias EX. Latias EX, another basic EX Pokemon with 210 HP, and this ability, Skyliner, gives all our basic Pokemon free retreat costs, which is really helpful. For example, Bloodmoon Ursaluna EX was 3 retreat costs. But also any other basics that we might have in play, like Hop's Cramorant or Ants Darumaka or Duskulls. And of course, Pidgeot EX and Budew already have free retreat, so it gives us a lot of mobility in this deck together with the Jet Energy. It basically gives us enough outs to retreat lock, in my opinion. So this is all the Pokemon. I guess I'll show the last tool that we're still working with, just so we have that out of the way as well. So another tool to buff our damage is Defiance Band. If we're behind on prizes, the attacks of the Pokemon this card is attached to do 30 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. So once again, this brings Luxray to like 210. This brings Darmanitan to 120 plus 90. This brings Budew to 40 damage. Pretty relevant. This brings Ursaluna to 270, which is very, very relevant. That means we can one-shot a Dragapult EX with 1 Dusclops proc, and then Defiance Band, Bloodmoon Ursaluna. Very relevant cards. So I'm running quite a few supporters. And of course the most common one that we're running is Arven. Arven lets you search your deck for an item and tool card and put it in your hand. Pretty simple, pretty effective, gives us very easy access to a Hop's Choice Band, for example, or Defiance Band. There was a previous version of this that also ran Rescue Board and instead of Latias EX, but I like Latias a lot more in this deck because it gives more Pokemon a free retreat. So 3 copies of Arven. We're not running Grand Tree in this version, by the way. That's something I should consider. But once again, one of the worst matchups of this deck is Dragapult EX. And giving Dragapult a chance to use Grand Tree is not something I enjoy doing. That's basically like having half an ace pack and your opponent having 1.5 ace packs. Alright, another common supporter that we have is 2 Iono. Iono makes every player, or like both players, shuffle their hand and put it on the bottom of their deck, and then they draw cards equal to their prize cards. Incredibly good hand disruption, but also just a really nice draw for us. Because of course this deck is very tempted to give away prizes early game to use the Dusclops and Dusknoir ability, so that your opponent draws less from Iono. Then we have a few one-off supporters. There's 1 Boss's Orders, of course, mandatory in most decks, I think. Boss's Orders. Switch one of your opponent's bench Pokemon to the active spot. And I'll show you the other gust of this deck immediately as well, if I can find it. Yeah, there we go. We also run 2 Counter Catcher, which is an item. Does the same thing as Boss, but can only be used if we're behind on prizes. Once again, something that is very common for our deck. I'll put it like right here for now, I guess. Then we also have a one-off of Colress Tenacity. This allows you to search your deck for a stadium and an energy card. Pretty useful, seeing as we cannot run Earthen Vessel because we're running special energy only. And now you might be asking me, Noah, what stadium are you running? I'll show you the stadium right away, don't worry. The one stadium we're not running very many stadiums, but we're running one copy of Artisan. Artisan allows you to grab any non-rulebox basic Pokemon and put it on your bench, but your opponent can, of course, also use this. And the final supporter we're running is Professor Turo Scenario. It allows you to pick up any Pokemon in play and put it in your hands. You just do discard all energy, or like all cards that are attached to that Pokemon, but it's another way to like kind of give some more mobility to this deck, save some Pokemon that have been damaged or stuck in the active by retreat lock. Let's get into the items. Those are the last things left to discuss. So first, let's talk consistency. How do we get all our Pokemon in play? The way we get all our Pokemon in play is by using 4 Nest Ball. You may search your deck for a basic Pokemon and put it on your bench. Pretty efficient Pokemon search, especially since the Darumaka is 80 HP and not 70. And we also run 3 Buddy-Buddy Poffin to grab 2 basic Pokemon that have 70 HP or less. Just put that here. And we also run 3 Ultra Ball, which can search your deck for any Pokemon. You will have to discard 2 other cards in order to use this. For all the Stage 2 Pokemon that we have, the Dusknoirs, the Pidgeots, we run 4 Rare Candy to help us with evolution. Yo, thanks for following. I appreciate that. Hope you're doing well today. We have 4 Rare Candy to help us aid us in getting our Stage 2 Pokemon online, skipping that Stage 1 stage. Very, very crucial, especially for Pidgeot. And we're starting to run out of space on this playmat, so let's boop everything up a little bit and see if we can fit in a little bit more. I have an empty space here. I guess that works perfectly, because we have 3 cards left to discuss. So in terms of recovery, we're running 1 Night Stretcher to put a Pokemon or basic energy from our discard pile into our hand. Really useful. We are also running 1 Super Rod. Yes, this is a Neo Genesis Super Rod, so the effect on this is not actual effective these days. These days it would say shuffle up to 3 in combination of Pokemon and basic energy from your discard pile into your deck. So it's like Night Stretcher for 3, but they go to deck instead of hands. So of course this effect is not what it actually does. And then lastly, our ace spec is going to be Unfair Stamp. An item card that you can only use if our opponent KO'd something from us last turn. Both players shuffle hand and deck. We draw 5, they draw 2. Essentially acting as a third Iono. This is the exact 60 list that I'm running right now. I'm probably gonna tweak this here and there if I can.